Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Robert, and today I want to discuss Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. This is a campaign boss battler, and I played the first three chapters worth of story and encounters. I used the retail standee edition, and I tried almost every class except the Witch and the Grove Maiden. My only prior experience with boss battlers is Kingdom Death, and now let's get into what I liked about the game. The first thing that I want to highlight is the amazing flexibility that this system offers. So, when it comes to resolving combat and skill tests, the game offers decks that you can use to resolve these, or you can use dice. So, for people that love to roll dice, or for people who hate dice, you have both options, which is awesome. When it comes to how complex you want your experience to be when controlling a character, the game offers a full character option where you will use the battle flow system and you're going to have a full character dashboard with a hand of cards that you use to play their abilities. But if you want to keep it simple for each character, you can use this companion system, which will distill the experience of controlling characters to just a couple cards. However, the game does still require you to control four characters, but you can mix and match how many companion characters you want to use and how many full-fledged characters you want to use in your party composition. Another cool, flexible aspect that this game offers is that you can swap characters at the start of each chapter. And you're probably going to be compelled to do so because there's just so many classes and you're probably going to want to try all of them. The game also offers multiple difficulty levels to cater to various styles of gameplay. When it comes to the story part, there's also another cool element where you have the full analog option with the storybook, but you can use the app driven narrated story if you want to go that route. But there's also this summarized version of each chapter's story that you can opt to use if you don't want to focus too much on the story, that will still offer the important story beats and the tests that are required to prepare your characters before the boss encounter that will allow you to just breeze through the story and just focus on the boss fights. So, yeah, I really can't emphasize enough how flexible this system is to cater to various people's needs. And I cannot imagine how tough it must have been to try to balance all of these moving pieces together, but they somehow pulled it off. And in my experience, I think it worked out really well. I tried all of these different flexible options, but the only thing that I skipped was the option to roll dice. But I did try the companion, full characters, the quick story, the app narrated story, the analog story. All right, moving on. The other thing I really liked about the game is how many classes it offers. And like I said, I tried all of them except two, and they all felt very distinct. And it offers various complexity levels among those characters, which will cater to different players. Next is the battle flow system, which I found very interesting. However, I'll say that if you want to control more than one full character, I'll say that for a solo player, it can lead to a bit of analysis paralysis. The battle flow system will have you control a hand of cards for each character, akin to Gloomhaven, but rather than cards going away permanently, like in Gloomhaven, they go around your character's board and they cycle. So eventually, these cards will come back to your hand. And it's a lot of moving pieces, even if you have multiple companion characters. So it'll take some effort to try to parse all of your options to play the most effectively for a solo player. And while I appreciate it being flexible in letting you control as many as just no full characters, so if you don't want to use a battle flow system, you could skip that completely, basically. I think that the game would be too shallow if you control anything less than two full characters. But the downside of that is, it can be a bit too complex. It can be a bit much piloting two full characters because you still have to take care of the companions and handle the AI and all of that. Another thing I liked is just the combat system in general and how damage is resolved. So I opted to go for the non-dice option. So you draw from these decks that have different colors, and depending on how powerful your character is and how many cool weapons they have, they'll draw cards from a specific color. So it goes from white, yellow, red to black. So black being the most powerful deck that you could draw from for maximum damage. And there's these combat tokens that will manipulate which decks you draw from, so you can boost your damage. So normally an attack that would have you draw from the white deck, the weakest attacks, you could use combat tokens to draw from the other colors, the higher damage decks. So you can manipulate draws like that to increase damage. There's combat tokens that will have you redraw misses, okay? Or in case that you're using dice, you'll reroll dice instead. But then there's also the determination rule. So if you miss an attack, you can recover all of the tokens that you used for that attack and also gain a combat token of your choice for the next time that you attempt an attack. So it will keep you motivated and it won't feel all depressing if you invest all of your tokens into this big attack and then it falls flat because you didn't draw properly. Another thing I really liked is the character ability cards when controlling full characters, which once you wrap your head around what your characters are about, it will lead to very cool combos. When it comes to the story, what I experienced up until chapter 3 was very well written and it offers some spectacular set pieces. However, personally, I didn't find that there was a compelling overarching story that made me excited to find out what happened next. Maybe this will present itself later in the story, but up until chapter 3, I did not want to find out what happened next or anything. I found it cool and competently written, and it definitely serves its purpose of, breaking the pace in between boss battles. But the overarching story didn't hook me in any way, so it just kind of going through the motions for me. The game also has a gorgeous dark fantasy aesthetic and presentation that I adored. I would say that is one of my favorite aspects of the game. It has this almost like grim dark Warhammer look to it that I just ate up. Loved it. I also found the graphic design work really well in this game, and I didn't have any issues with the component quality. And the game also has gorgeous miniatures. All right, now I'm going to move on to a couple mixed points, and then I'll move on to what I didn't like about the game. All right, when it comes to mixed things, I found that the loot was not very exciting in this game, which also means that the character customization is almost non-existent, at least within the first three chapters. But I can appreciate that at the same time, so that's why I'm not making this like a full negative point or anything, because it does keep the game a bit simpler. There is already a lot to control for a solo player, which I'll get into later. Okay. So not having like all of these equipment slots for a character, I kind of appreciated it in this system not being too complex, okay, or too vast. But when I got loot in this game, I wasn't that excited about it. It's like, oh, okay, so I get a slightly better weapon than before. Let's assign it to this character. That's really it. I wasn't that excited about it. Compared to Kingdom Death Monster, when it comes to outfitting your characters, that I found KDM a lot more compelling and crunchy when it comes to customizing your characters. Here, I didn't really feel like there was much of that. Maybe this changes in later chapters, but I doubt it. All right, the other thing is this game is a table hog. Okay, you'll need a pretty big table, and I actually wish I had an even bigger table just so that I could have the story map set up, but sadly my table's not big enough for that. So every time I had to set up an encounter, I had to remove all of the story stuff, set it to the side, and then set up the encounter board. Now, my last mixed aspect of the game is the fact that when one of your Oathsworns die during an encounter, it's replaced by a minor ally. And now, I'm not going to say that this is a negative necessarily. I understand why they did this, because it kind of sucks in these types of games where your character dies and you're just sitting around twiddling your thumbs while other players keep fighting, which it's a cool mechanic. The thing is, as a solo player, this really doesn't have any value for me, and it just adds to the fiddliness. So one of my Oathsworns die, which I'll talk about, that whole element of how frequent it is for your Oathsworns to die. So that'll happen, and now you have to go through this step of adding an ally and setting up a character, basically. So I just did not care for that as a solo player. Again, this is not a negative necessarily. I think that this is very valuable in multiplayer, so that a a player is not completely out of the game and they can still play. So I find that cool. Just for a solo player, this has no value for me. I would have rather this been with how flexible the game is. I would have liked this to be an optional mechanic, and maybe instead I could just have my Oathsworns be a bit more buffed or a bit more powerful, so that and when they die, they're out for good. I would have rather that had been the case, but yeah, I did not care for this mechanic as a solo player. All right, so now moving on to what I wasn't a fan of. So the monster AI here does offer distinct encounters from the three that I experienced. They were in different in their own way and interesting, but unfortunately, I just did not enjoy controlling their turns, and I think that this adds up with how much you are already controlling as a solo player with the four characters. It almost felt like playing multiplayer two-handed for me. I just did not like the upkeep of controlling these monsters and carrying out their complex actions, because there is a lot when you play an AI card. Uh, there's like this chain reaction of things that characters being pushed, attacks happening. So it sometimes it goes fast, but overall, every time that I had to play an AI card, it just kind of flow of the game just kind of froze, and I have to like very carefully read what the AI card did. And each boss has its own panel with all of these extra rules, which I'll get into later. But yeah, so I was not a fan of controlling the monster AI in this game. But obviously, this is more coming from a solo player perspective. In multiplayer, this would not be much of an issue. Someone could control the monster, focus on controlling the monster each game, so it would help with that. But yeah, from solo perspective, not a fan of having to control the monster. I also felt that the Oathsworn characters were a bit fragile. So there's a 6 health limit for Oathsworns, and during the story, if certain outcomes happen, your Oathsworns will arrive weakened or wounded at an encounter, so they'll have less than 6 health, probably. So that this issue of the Oathsworns being very prone to dying during encounters is exacerbated by the story making that worse, probably. And I just felt that the game kind of punishes you for doing cool things. So your Ulcer will pull off this combo and destroy 3 body parts. But when you destroy a body part from a monster, guess what? For each body part, you have to draw a reaction card. So your Ulcer is probably gonna get beaten to a pulp for destroying those 3 body parts. Even if you destroy the last one, it doesn't matter. So when you destroy the last body part, even if you destroy the monster completely and you kill 3 body parts, it'll still resolve those 3 reaction cards as a death throw. And I just wasn't a fan of that. I just did not like how frequently the Oathsworns died. Now, like I said earlier, you have this mechanic where an ally comes out if your Oathsworn dies, but I would have rather just the Oathsworn was a bit more powerful and they stuck around longer. And finally, my biggest issue with the game is just the amount of upkeep. Now, if the story and gameplay loop were compelling enough, I would be willing to put up with it, I think. But even with the companion system that it offers, where you can have less complex characters, I just did not find the combat or story enticing enough for me to put up with the amount of upkeep. And as a result, I quit after the third encounter finished. I just did not want to play, so this game is gonna go on my trade pile. I really, really wanted to play. I really wanted to see it through, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of felt like I was relieved when I decided that I did not want to play through the rest of the game. And trust me, it's a me problem. It's not a problem with the game. I also wasn't a fan of the fact that with each monster you have to like learn all of these extra rules, and I understand that they have to keep the encounters interesting. I get it, but I did not look forward to having to learn all of these different rules with future monsters that I might have encountered. So, in conclusion, for me, I think this game totally earns its top 100 spot in Board Game Geek. And yeah, this game does a lot of amazing things, especially with how flexible it is. Again, I can't begin to emphasize how amazing it is that they pulled off the amount of flexibility that this game offers. It's unprecedented. I've not seen another game that offers this much flexibility. And somehow still works. Play testing all of these moving parts must have been a Herculean task. But in my case, as a solo player, I did not find the gameplay loop or story compelling enough to put up with the amount of upkeep. Some games I think are just meant to be played multiplayer. And I do appreciate that this game is solvable and it has worked for a lot of people. It's a lot of people's favorite boss battler, and I can see why. I would just rather play Kingdom Death Monster. I do appreciate that I gave it a shot, but I think it's time to find it a new home. But yeah, folks, I want to thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, go ahead and put them in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.